Hi everyone. So I'm Fiona, I'm the Deputy Director of London Play. It's great to be invited, and that's really inspiring what you've all been up to. I mean, we don't really expect anything less from adventure play people. We all know that you're really, super creative and really experienced at evaluating risk and stuff. So it's not a surprise, but it's really lovely to hear those stories. I'm just going to cover three things really. I'll give you an update about what London Play's been up to during the lockdown. I'm going to share some findings from our survey of London adventure playgrounds, and I'm just going to say a little bit at the end about play streets. So prior to lockdown at London Play, we had four kind of major ongoing funded projects. We had Playworks 2, which was funded by City Bridge, that was working with London Adventure Playgrounds to develop tools within 4 adventure playgrounds to improve their sustainability. We also got a 4-year lottery-funded Play Street program. We've also got a Mayor of London funded project taking children out to Epping Forest for building and camping in the wild weekends, and those were mostly groups from adventure playgrounds. And we also had the outreach project for Royal Park, so that was delivering play activities in Greenwich and Regent's Park alongside new playground developments that they were doing there. So most of those projects obviously involved lots of face-to-face work, and most of that's been suspended. The funders have generally been pretty flexible and understanding that things are shifting. So they've kept their support in place, which has been really great. The Royal Parks project is the one that has been temporarily completely suspended, and we've had to furlough 1 member of staff as a result of that. But the rest of us are all still working from home. I mean, our income from contracts is going to go down quite a lot, but we're basically using the opportunity to kind of ramp up our work on communications and campaigning. So hopefully some of you might be aware of some of the stuff we've been doing, but we've started a weekly newsletter called the Playwire Weekly, which kind of includes updates on policy and research about play and children in the time of Corona, tips for play, and we've got some slots for sort of children lockdown diaries and global pen pals from around the world. Always looking for new content for that. If anyone wants to send us their stories, we're always really happy to have those. We've carried out a couple of surveys of adventure playgrounds in London to promote and share their work, and sort of to inform, how we can best support adventure playgrounds. So on the back of that, we have issued a couple of pieces of guidance for adventure playgrounds. One was kind of a summary that was quite early on about the financial support that was available to playgrounds, and also another one on sort of minimising the risk of transmission of corona under limiting opening conditions. And we have also been collecting some risk assessments that we're hoping to kind of publish on our website so that they can be shared sort of in a template potentially that adventure playgrounds can share. So obviously lots of you have already been working on that as well, so that's great. We're also preparing to launch new websites actually on London Play Streets and also on London Adventure Playgrounds, so we're generating content for that. And like Play England and the API and others, we've been lobbying the government and decision makers. So we've set out a position statement on the risks and benefits of allowing children to play. Our stance is supported now by quite a few people, which we're kind of promoting the idea that essentially the risk of letting children play together outside, as long as they're not vulnerable themselves or are living with vulnerable people, it seems like the risk of doing that is so low, and the risk of preventing them from doing it are just mounting by the day, essentially. We've got a bit of a mental health crisis of children rising, and so we're doing all we can to kind of push decision makers to think about that and think about issuing guidance which makes it easier for children to play together in a natural way. We've done an open letter to the Education Secretary as well, urging him to issue guidance for summer play scheme. We've copied that into local authority leads, children's leads and stuff like that. We've also initiated an article with The Guardian, which we're hoping might be published tomorrow or the next day about the scandal that we see that sort of pay-to-play enterprises like Go Ape and Legoland have been, given the go-ahead to open up and are making preparations to open on the 4th of July, whereas free local play schemes have been given zip. So we're trying to really raise that as an issue. We've had a few quite good responses. Paul, our director, managed to speak directly to Sadiq Khan on air last week, and he promised to do what he could to get adventure playgrounds open and guidance issued about that. We've also had the chair of the British Safety Council, Lawrence Waterman. He's issued a public statement as well, agreeing that the benefit of allowing children to play together outside now is actually outweighing the risk in most cases. So that's been some really good results. Between us all, with Play England and all the other lobbyists, maybe we can claim some responsibility for finally there was an inclusion in the COVID catch-up, 1 billion COVID catch-up plan published on Friday. The statement about that did include a paragraph about summer play provision, although, it said guidance and following the science. It wasn't much, but it was at least a recognition that they are aware that that needs to happen. I mean, I do think the silver lining to all this is that children's well-being, including their right to play, is being talked about a lot and promoted more from across lots of different professional groups. So that's a little bit of a silver lining to all this. Finally, like many, we've also been submitting funding proposals, and we've got some funding from City Bridge, allowing us to fund 2,000 emergency play packs for children in need across London, which we're going to be distributing next week through London Adventure Playgrounds and food banks. So we've been really busy. So just moving on to the survey findings. So we've done 2 surveys of London Adventure Playgrounds. The latest was at the end of May, and we're looking to find out how adventure playgrounds are weathering the pandemic, what they're doing now and what their plans for the future are, and also what support they might need going forward. Obviously the findings were a little bit skewed because probably those playgrounds that have closed down completely are not going to be answering surveys right now, but we had 19 responses from 15 playgrounds, which represents about a fifth of London Adventure Playgrounds. In terms of what they're doing now, half the playgrounds, about half said they'd lost a significant amount of funding, but more than a quarter had actually attracted new funding, so that's positive. 80% of playgrounds had furloughed staff. Only 1 playground had laid off permanent staff. 2/3 were delivering new services, and lots were distributing food to those in need, as we've heard from some of the speakers before. 95% of them said they were keeping in contact with their users, and half said they were providing remote support for their users. And lots were also using the time to do maintenance and write funding proposals. In terms of plan for the future, this was a month ago now, so it was all a bit kind of vague what people's plans were, and what came out strongly, unsurprisingly, was the kind of difficulty of reopening if people are required to enforce social distancing. So one said it's very hard to reconcile the ethos of adventure play with social distancing, but they said, but I'm sure we'll find a way. So that's the adventure play ethos is also to find a way to make things work. So yeah. In terms of support needed, people highlighted the need for training on new ways of working and play ideas for post-lockdown or remote services, and just continuing with needing information about how to operate post-lockdown. Lots of people were keen to have ways of directly communicating with other adventure playground workers to share good practice and support each other. I mean, that's what this is doing, so that's brilliant. So all these responses are kind of helping us inform our development of our adventure play website. And also on the back of that, we have been working on some new proposals, which we've got one in the final stages of being considered by a major funder now, that will include some play worker training and some direct support for some adventure playgrounds. So obviously if that is successful, which we hope it is, we'll capture progress and share that with everybody as we go. Finally, just about play streets. As I mentioned earlier, that's a significant part of our work, and most boroughs in London have asked play streets to suspend activities during lockdown. We do know of a few streets that have actually run kind of socially distanced sessions on their streets. So one street kind of did a dance off, someone blaring music from the window while the people in the street were all distantly dancing. People have run PE sessions, so there's been some creative ways of dealing with it. But as the lockdown's lifted, we are getting quite a lot of inquiries now from new play streets and for guidance from existing play streets about whether, when they can sort of open up. And we actually think there's like a lot of latent play streets now that exist in a kind of virtual sense through the growth of mutual aid groups and other street-based support networks and WhatsApp groups that have been sprouting up in response to people supporting their neighbours during the pandemic. And we've seen that people want to come together physically, like the NHS clapping proved that. And there's quite a lot of increased positives around awareness of the positives of low traffic streets. So we actually think when the circumstances allow, we could see quite a big explosion in play streets. So we're getting ready for that. I mean, there's some quite notable additional benefits to play streets in a post-lockdown world. They're the kind of ultimate in local play provision. There's no travel required to or from a play street, so no one's getting on a bus or in the car to get to them. They're free, they use existing unmodified space. All the children and adults on a play street can use their own toilet and kitchen facility, so they don't run the risk of transmission of those spaces. A lot of play on the street seems to involve quite a lot less direct contact than like in soft play areas in the park, etc. And there's also quite a lot of potential for play centres or providers that don't have a lot of outdoor space to potentially use a play street to extend the amount of outdoor space they can offer children that are attending there. So, we see that there's quite a lot of potential for play streets as we lift lockdown, and obviously councils can play a big role in encouraging people to do that. Most councils in London and elsewhere have play street policies already in existence.
Yep.
Some councils are already asking residents to suggest streets for filtering and to make them low traffic, and that could be a lead into play streets. And we're working with a couple of councils to make their processes easier for residents to apply. Car Free Day in September, we're hoping that might be a date to encourage people to perhaps come out and swap their car for a space hopper. I think the bigger scale events in central London and other, big roads and boroughs, I think it's quite unlikely that those kind of scale of events will happen. But we hope that by then the conditions might be in favour of children coming out to play on the street while perhaps the adults maintain some distance. So, and that date could potentially mark the date for some re-emergence onto our streets. So in summary, I guess we could say what we're doing is sort of trying our best to strategically to campaign for play and for adventure playgrounds, and also trying to work on the ground to support the play sector. We're always happy to hear any things that people want to share. We're happy to push them out through our networks, and we're kind of hopeful that we might all come out of this time to a society that has a better grasp on what's important and wants to do better by its children in future. So I think there's light there. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Fiona. That was great. Very quick run through a lot of work that you've been doing at London Play. I want to quickly start with some of the questions before we finish. We're aiming to finish at 12:30. So one of the questions is, with your play packs that you're sending out, can you tell us a bit about what you're going to put in them, and also which adventure playgrounds will be being able to hand those out? Those are two questions that come up.
Well, so we've developed it's quite exciting, a pack of playing cards with ideas on them so there's 52 ideas for play things that can happen in confined spaces or outdoors or whatever, and there's a small pack of props to go with those. So it includes things like a pen, like mini Lego figures and things like that. I mean, through our survey that we did of adventure playgrounds, we asked people if they would be willing to, or they wanted to distribute those. So I think we are full up of, I think we've got a full list of distribution, but it's mostly adventure playgrounds that have already been involved in sending out food parcels or, involved in food distribution. So where people are already being delivered or coming to collect food, they'll be able to pick up a pack of play props and ideas with that.
Okay, all right. And then there's another question around what different settings can do. Should they be lobbying their local councillors? And if so, what help can you give around what they should or shouldn't say?
Well, we've got a lot of stuff about, risk versus benefit. I mean, play workers are very well versed in, obviously you can never say that there's no risk to doing anything. Otherwise, we'd all just be hiding under the couch all day. So, it's about promoting the benefits of play, and that our view is that these now do outweigh the risks of keeping children from playing. And there's a statement on our website from the Play Safety Council chairman to support that. There's various things on our website which support that the research that the risk of play is very low. So that's all sort of fuel to go to local councillors with. And yeah, it seems to me from what the other adventure playground speakers have been saying that councils are pretty willing to kind of discuss these things. So I would encourage everybody to go to their council with that sort of information and make the case for why they should open, really.
Okay, that's brilliant.